0 to 100 real quick.
This is 0 to 100
with Natasha and Serena.
Hey everybody.
Hey.
I'm like hype
Hey,
and you're
listener.
like, hey.
Hey, listener. How are you doing today? Yes, I'm just talking to you. That one listener out there, you know who you are. I'm talking to you. Let me stop.
Please, not one listener.
No, but I'm talking to that one.
Oh, okay. All right.
One specific listener out there. They know who I'm talking to.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. Welcome, everybody. This is 0 to 100 with Natasha and Serena.
Hey, y'all. It's Natasha, in case you didn't know. Mm-hmm. All right, so how you doing, girl? You good?
I'm good.
Matter of fact, no. Let's do our 100 seconds. Yes. So you started off. I'm going to get my little timer.
Yay.
Please hold. Okay. Timer. We want, ready, set. Update us, Serena.
All right. So 0 to 100. So a lot has been going on. I feel like it's been a long time since we talked, but I just announced that I'm having a second baby. So I'm really excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Little Natasha will be here soon.
Well, we'll see if it's a little Natasha or a little boy. It could go either way, you know?
True.
And then the other thing is that my husband and I, we've had a business called Let's Talk for a while, and recently we were granted in our city of Delray Beach a actual space, like a little cottage downtown Delray to operate out of. So we're very excited about that. So Let's Talk Smart Cafe coming to you very soon. And that is already 50 seconds. Natasha, what's up with you?
Close enough. Yeah, so, I am tired, okay? So I thought that I just needed a little vacation. So I took my behind to New York. Friend Tamika Mallory had a huge birthday party. It was amazing, so much fun. And I blew some dollars at the Saks Fifth Avenue in New York. So you know how easy that was. And I came back and I was even more tired, and there was even more work to do, and I'm just like, I don't know what, but, just keeping it pushing. So really, that's like what I've been focusing on, and I'm sick of saying something about work and my new firm, but it literally is like a child. So I don't have any legitimate children. I have people that I claim as my children. I have a dog, but the firm is my baby. So that's just what we're going to talk about until it grows up and can fend for itself. That's our 100 seconds.
Yay. Okay. So good. A lot going on, really.
Girl.
So what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today? Hey, you know what? You said something. You were like, someone out there must really need this episode because even though life just kept getting in the way, we still can't. Okay, so when are we rescheduling it? And it was almost like a tag team. You know how you play phone tag and, you're calling the person and they call you back and everybody knows how phone tag goes. That's literally how this episode goes. It was, I had an emergency, then you had an emergency, then we had an emergency, and then but here we are, because one thing that we have made very clear about our intentions with 0 to 100 is that mental health is one of the topics and platforms that we're always going to discuss because we recognize the importance of it. So even though May is finished, we knew we wanted to recap or like wrap it all up and close it out with this episode where we are going to be sharing stories, not just our stories, but the stories of some of our listeners. And it's crucial because you can share a story and it can save a life, like legitimately. So that's what we're going to do. And Serena, let's just go ahead and start it with you since you over there typing away about something.
Yeah, I have kind of been dreading this episode a little bit just because it's like, it's not always comfortable to talk about your own story. It's pretty easy when we get on here and talk about like resources and what, steps to what you should do. But to talk about your own story is a little bit, is uncomfortable.
And I'm just gonna jump in there, and I'm glad you said it, and I just want to give you a little piece of comfort. I admit that's what I was doing too. So it is not to say but when an emergency would come up, I would almost be glad. Like if you would be like, I can't do it today, I'm like, it's okay, it's fine, because this is like very uncomfortable for me.
Right.
So the fact that you're a little uncomfortable is a little comforting, but it also makes me just want to like reach out and hug you for doing something, because, you know, it is uncomfortable, but you recognize the importance of it. Exactly. So here, you feel me hugging you, girl?
Thank you. I do.
Got a little extra cushion lately too, so you know, a little warmer. All right, girl.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, oh my gosh, I can't believe that it's actually been a year, really, over a year since since we first started into the pandemic and going into quarantine. So it's kind of like, it feels like it's been a lifetime ago. But my mental health experience over the pandemic and in quarantine started out as great. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great, as like a pause in life and to be able to step away, because we're all going 100 miles per hour at work and with whatever we have going on. And so it was kind of like a breath of fresh air. I mean, it was scary because it was the unknown. We didn't know what was going on, but it was a breath of fresh air for me, I would say, because it was like, okay, pause, stay at home. You're with your family. I was with my son, my husband, and we just kind of like went from, really 100 to 0 because we were just like relaxing. And my work pause, I work in like the entertainment cultural sector. So it's like, it just paused, like everything stopped. And so it was a nice break. And I felt like, okay, I can really catch my breath. I can really figure out what I kind of look at my life and see what I want to do, where I'm going. Am I reaching the goals that I want to reach? Spending time with my family, checking in with them. So that was great. And then it's crazy because it's been almost literally a year to the day that we're talking right now. And my husband and I at that time also found out again that we were expecting a child. So I was like, oh, this is great. This is great news. A little scary because of the time, but also it was like, it's great news. It's 9 months from now, so we'll be good. But things kind of quickly went wrong, where I found out that it was an ectopic pregnancy and was in a lot of pain. I had to go to the hospital, get emergency surgery. It was kind of like a whirlwind and went very fast. And got the emergency surgery and went home and was starting to recover. And because when things go really fast, especially when they're traumatic events, you don't tend to stop and really think about it. You just kind of go through it and trying to get through whatever you need to get through. It was like getting through the surgery, then getting through the recovery, and then getting back to work, and then all of that stuff. But then, like, as things started to settle down, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, so it's still kind of like everything's, you're at home kind of isolated from other people. Even in the hospital, I wasn't even allowed to have family there. My husband wasn't even allowed to come in. You're isolated. So then you start to really think about it and really start to try and process, okay, what really just happened here? Like, what did I really just go through? And then that was I would say difficult, because you have your family, you can pick up the phone and call them, but I'm not really that type of person, like where I would just pick up the phone and call someone and be like, I'm really sad about this, or this is happening. So if they're not right there, then for me it feels like you're kind of alone, or that you're going through it alone. And so I was really kind of struggling with the fact that, what did I just go through? And then trying to process, I could have, like, I just lost a child, which was devastating to us as a family. And then also it was like, I also could have just lost my life. Like, because I was kind of like in pain and trying to, downplay it and say, oh, everything's okay, and not really say anything. And then it got to a point where it was an emergency and I had to be rushed to the hospital. So then I was kind of like, I should have kind of listened to my body. So kind of a little bit of blaming yourself, of like, I wish like I would have done something sooner. I didn't do anything soon enough. So struggling with that as well. And then and thinking about the fact that because of that decision, like, I could have, not been here to raise my son or to be here with my family. Like, that really bothered me because he's so small. And then on top of that, like, if that wasn't enough, we started to also notice some signs with my son, who at the time was just about to turn 2. He was like 1, about to turn 2. We started to notice some things that he wasn't doing, like he had done before, but then he had stopped doing it. So there was some words that he had that he would say, and then we noticed that he completely stopped saying them. And then there were some things that we thought he should have more words, but he wasn't progressing in that area. And so that was another thing, another layer of it that was just like, what's going on with that? So at the time that I'm trying to process one thing, I'm just also trying to figure out another issue, which as a mother, like, I have to say this is kind of like one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through, because it's like when it's yourself and you're going through something, I guess like when I, went through the emergency surgery, when it's yourself, you're like, oh, I can take that. I can handle that. I'm an adult. I know how much I can handle. I'm strong, this and that. But then when it's someone that's very close to you and you feel like, oh, I got to protect them. I got to help them. Like, it's my responsibility. And you have no real control over it. It is like 10 times worse, because you're just like, what can I do? How can I fix this? I got to do something. And so we started to have these concerns about our son. And then we immediately, I remember like the week after I got out of the hospital, I wasn't even supposed to be doing anything because it was like 4 weeks recovery. I got him into speech therapy. And I was like in the class with him, like trying to figure out with the therapist, like trying to figure out like what we should be doing, what the goal should be. And we started literally a week after I got out of the hospital. And then that kind of just took precedence and took over, because I was like, okay, great, we're in speech therapy. It's going to get better. And we didn't see the progress that we wanted to see. In fact, we started to see even more things that we were concerned about, more signs that were not normal. And so we were seeing a little bit of repetitive behavior, and it's very subtle I could credit the pandemic, because if we weren't at home spending so much time together and being with him, I work a full-time job. So my son goes to my mom in the middle of the day when I'm working. And so, by the time I get off, I see him for like 2 hours, get him food, put him to bed, and then we start all over again for the next day. So I could credit the pandemic for us being home and spending large amounts of time together, because these things that my son was doing, they're very subtle. And so people that aren't around him a lot would say, oh, it's just because he's a boy, or, oh, it's just, he's little, like, or, kids progress on their own time. So, whatever. But I was just like, as a mother, when I was watching, I'd be like, no, there's something else going on here. And so, long story short, it started a full journey of, just trying to get him screened and get him the therapy and the things that he needed, which we're at that place right now. And that's a whole other story. But, the mental health aspect of dealing with that was, I would say emotionally, it was very hard on me. And I don't think I even recognized it. I didn't stop in the moment to really even address or assess my feelings. I don't think I implemented any of the things that we have been talking about over the last few weeks, because it's just so easy to just get caught up into what's happening, into your situation, to stop and take a check on yourself. And people always say, like, you have to, it's not selfish to stop and check on yourself, because you need to be the best person you can be for the people around you. And I don't know that I did that. I don't think that, obviously I feel like I'm tried to do the best that I could do for my son and my family and be present. But I will say that I don't feel like I, in the moment, tried to stop and really like assess, okay, take some time and really breathe. I just kind of like dove in. Maybe I did it subconsciously, because I will say I did implement, like, I think at the beginning of the year or the end of last year, I implemented like a girls' weekend randomly. And I was like, every month, and I did it with you, Natasha. So I was like, every month I'm going to have a girls' weekend and just get away. And so I would like come to you, which is crazy, because I would just come to your house for like the weekend and just check out, kind of relax. And that, I will say, was like the best thing for me at the time, because I was dealing with all of those things, and I was just like, I feel like I'm going to get a little emotional because I was dealing with all of those things, and it was just like nice to just be like, okay, I can just take a breather. And you do feel some guilt, but I think that probably was one of the best things for my mental health, because I was able to kind of step away, take a moment, just be myself for a little bit. And I remember going home, I think we had brunch or something like that. And I remember going home and being like, oh my gosh, it was so nice to be around like other adults that were like just talking about like normal things like that were, and it just was so refreshing to me, because I was just like, I'm kind of in the midst of this thing and I'm struggling with all of these things, but I just need like a moment to just like decompress. And like, you go crazy if you're just always thinking about, what's going wrong or what's not right or what's not where you want it to be. So I probably think that was the one thing that I did for my mental health. It really helped me. I wish I would have done more, but that's really my story over the pandemic. That's a lot, but that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
And I mean, that's the one intentional thing that you did. So just recognizing like, your intent to do something good for your mental health, doing it, and then the benefit of it is how you start to find yourself implementing more things that help.
Right.
But I mean, some people implement too many things because they put themselves and their mental health first, and some people don't do anything. That's fine for them on either side, but you have to kind of, it's like trial and error throughout life, figure it out, like what works, what doesn't, what's too much, because imagine if you did that every weekend, then the guilt would probably override the benefit. Like you would feel bad if something happened while you were gone or whatever, you're like, oh, but I'm doing this every weekend, this is not okay. Right. So, that was a balance that worked for you. And even though you are with child, we need to get back to that. Okay.
Yes, exactly. You don't have to tell me twice.
I mean, you just told that story as if you were just like reading it off paper, like you didn't really go through it, personally, but I know that that's what you went through, and your strength is incredible. And I hope that someone, whether they went through something similar or know someone who did, or just as a woman can relate, because I haven't gone through anything like that. But as a woman, it's a level above empathize, like I don't just empathize because I'm not a mother and I don't directly understand. I don't just sympathize because you're my friend, but I can feel parts of it. As a woman, as someone who could have been in that situation, and it's terrifying. Yeah, it is terrifying. So I'm not gonna point out the things that kind of stood out to me when you were going through this with regard to the medical care and things like that. But I hope that other people listen to the story and they're able to on their own as well.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so let me read a story.
Okay.
Let's see. So the stories that I'm going to share are all going to be shared anonymously. One of these stories, I didn't say one way or the other, but because without the explicit, consent to share their identity, then I'm just not going to. So if you want to comment, either of you, to invite people to reach out to you directly, absolutely. Because, I mean, to create a community from this would be amazing. But at the end of the day, it's really the story that helps. So, just sharing your story, I think, regardless of who the person is behind the story, is really powerful. Okay, so this one is titled Rags to Riches. At the outset of the pandemic, my mental state, I would say it was a little rough. And just disclaimer, this is my first time reading it. I didn't want it to be, I didn't want to have anything to add to it or anything, to give. I just wanted it to be raw for me, the same way as it is for you all too. So I'm going to start over. At the outset of the pandemic, my mental state, I would say it was a little rough. It was a lot of together time, repetitive actions, and behaviors. I almost felt like I lost me and space or room to call my own, since we were all in the house together 24/7. It felt like there was no gap between employee, wife, and mom. Then I realized, if nothing else, I gained time. and I had to choose and find my happiness. With this mindset, I started experiencing growth in areas that were often hindered by my day-to-day commitments. I focused on my health, my business, and my personal growth. I started to change, and it wasn't linear nor fast, but it was happening. I started to understand and focus on peace, connecting with my family in unique ways, and relishing in the fact that no matter what was happening outside in the world, my immediate and core family was safe and alive. For those reasons, I should have been and am thankful. Through my recommitment to church and to understanding myself, like figuring out what the heart of the issue was at that moment, the true importance of the issue, being honest with me, vulnerable with those I love, I saw a holistic difference. Wow, that was powerful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I really like the fact that she said that, it wasn't linear and it wasn't fast.
Right.
But it was happening. So sometimes you don't have to be moving at 90 miles an hour to feel the fact that you're moving. You know what I'm saying? Like if you just stop and realize like, oh, there are changes, but
right.
They're happening. You just work through it. You want to share one?
Sure. That was beautifully well written. My people didn't write anything out like that, but they did share some experiences with them that they went through during the pandemic. One of them, which is, one is anonymous. The other one came from my mom, and I'll share hers first. So she currently, during the pandemic, she lived across the street from me, like in a apartment complex, and she was outside walking her dog, and she heard some loud, some people going back and forth. Mm-hmm. Like they were in an argument, and she turned the corner and she saw someone in the parking lot yelling up to someone on their balcony on the third floor. And she said it was a young girl who probably was between 19 and maybe 21 years old, and was threatening to end her life and jump because she was just going through whatever she was going through. She just felt like it, when people get to that point, they feel like there's nothing else they can do. So that person was alone, just trying to really talk that person down and just be like, no, please don't. And another person walked up and immediately called 911. And this went on. My mom said she watched it go on for about an hour, where the police came, the fire trucks came, and everyone was just horrified just watching this and trying to talk the young girl down. And my mom just kept saying she was just so young. I couldn't believe, what was happening. It was just, we all wanted her to just be safe and to get down from there. And she refused. And she said, luckily, the firefighters were able to get into her apartment, break into her apartment. She had left the sliding glass door open, so they were able to get to her and stop her from jumping. But my mom, when she was telling me the story, was just saying, you just don't know what people are going through, and what they're, especially right now, as people are more isolated than ever. I mean, we're getting back to being open, which is awesome, but at the time we were just, you don't really think about how isolation is affecting people like that. And then they're already struggling with things, and so they feel like there's no one really to turn to. And so this young girl, thankfully, they were able to stop her from her attempt of ending her life and get her help. I don't know what happened to her now, and I'm hoping that she is getting the help and sees that there is value in her life and purpose, and that ending it is not the answer. But it's not like you look at those people and say, oh my gosh, they're crazy. I don't know how they could ever get to that point. You start to realize, even over the pandemic, when you're feeling this isolation and all these things, like anybody could get there. Like that's not far from anybody, if you don't address your mental health, if you're not really checking in, if you're not really, you have a support system, anybody could get there. So, just hearing that story is kind of stuff that you always see in the movies, and you think that really doesn't happen. It does. People are struggling every day. And, so it's important that we're talking about this.
Yeah. Wow. That's insane to witness.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, another story from somebody else. Shucks, I really have to share my story, huh?
Yeah, you do.
Because I know I'm supposed to do that next.
Yeah.
Do that last. Okay, so here's another story.
Okay. All right. We'll let you get off.
One of our listeners. And this is a faithful listener. So, shout out to you. We appreciate you. Okay, so the last year was fraught with fear and frustration, darkness, grief, rage. While so many people reflect on this period with some of the aforementioned feelings, I found that it gave me the opportunity to quiet those feelings in myself after feeling them in tandem with others for so long. So I cleaned up my routines. I cooked meals for myself. For the first time, I learned how to make soups. I started going to bed at a certain time each night, whether or not I had to work the next day. I monitored my spending to save for a new car. I stopped smoking. You were smoking? And I started meditating. I'm happy to say that all of these practices are still in place and have made me a more balanced person, empathetic and attentive. Recently, I read a quote by mathematician Blaise Pascal. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. The act to listening to others causes us to turn inward. What are our errors in thinking, aberrant behaviors, unconscious biases, deepest wounds? A year ago, I started quieting my thoughts and began hearing them. I'm still listening. Wow. Dang, just show out then.
That's good.
That was so good. I
that.
really like that I started quieting my thoughts and began hearing them. Whoa.
That's a hard thing to do.
Whoa. Okay. Wow. Okay, your turn.
It's your turn.
No, you gotta share a story.
Okay, I'll share mine very quickly because I want to get to your story. This one is an anonymous one. It's somebody I know who is mom, also a teacher, and so they had already had a history of dealing with anxiety and had really taken steps to really get it under control and to not struggle with it in the way that they were when they first started having their attacks. So they were kind of living their life, feeling healthy, feeling good, and then the pandemic hit. Of course, there were so many people who were affected in their professions when it comes to the pandemic, but teachers especially, because they're with a lot of kids. School shut down, then it went to online, and it was hard dealing with kids, and then making them log on, kids that weren't logging on, kids that you were losing touch with, and then being home with her family as well. She just started to feel those anxiety attacks really rev up again and really be even stronger than what she remembered. And she just always felt like she was out of control. Like there was just like the sense of not being able to control. I think we all felt that because we had no control over this coronavirus that was out. We didn't know a lot about it. We were like, what's going on? We thought we were going to be shut down for 2 weeks. It ended up being up until now. And so she really felt her anxiety, but immediately, because she had the history of dealing with it before, she didn't waste time and really she contacted her therapist right away and started to really take steps. So she was very on top of it and took the steps in order to really get her anxiety under control. And it's something that she knows she'll probably have to deal with for the rest of her life, but now she feels like she's better equipped, and she's proud that she did. Like, she wasn't shy or afraid or embarrassed to reach out to her therapist right away. So that's awesome. That's my story, my friend's story.
I'm gonna need to call my therapist after this.
Girl,
oh, Lord. Oh, okay. All right. So honestly, I think the most difficult thing for me through quarantine, because again, we kind of tried to keep these stories specific to mental health and our mental state during this whole pandemic and while we were quarantined. So it's the difference between like where I was just prior to quarantine and where I am now, or where I've been, kind of towards the end of it. But so I went in prepping a case that I was very, very passionate about. Like, it was about to go to trial. Um, you know, to no longer even working for that firm or on that project and being completely on my own now, which is equal parts exciting and terrifying. So I think I went into quarantine like in a comfortable, safe place, like, gearing up for trial and working 90 hours a week. Like, that's my safe place. Um, I Before quarantine, like literally leading up to it, I was finally back on my fitness game. I recently just done my first Spartan race, and I was working out every single day, eating good. I'm not gonna say great, but I was eating good. Um, again in trial mode, and I finally had gotten settled into my apartment. It had been almost a year, but still, I was finally getting settled in, and I was just like more focused on me. So to me, ish was good. Um, so I think because I went in to quarantine in that kind of place, in retrospect, I was at the top of my game at that time. Like, looking back on it, I would say that, in that moment I was. And I think that that's why I was self-proclaimed quarantine bae. Like, I was literally killing it. I was working the crazy hours. I was managing my team. I was staying on top of all work. But then on top of that, I was making sure that my space, like my tiny apartment that was now my workspace, my personal space, my place where I slept, my work, like everything was in that one space. I was keeping it tidy. I was cooking my own 3 meals every single day. I was still exercising from my home. Just nothing was lacking. There was nothing that I felt at that time that, oh, I need to work on this or make time for that. But then I fell off. Okay. So and I don't even think at the beginning when I would say I started to fall off or whatever, I don't think I fell off, but I just started to fall back to normalcy, honestly. Um, and I think that, I don't know. I just think that there were a lot of stressors that led to that. There was a lot of toxic BS that was going on in the world, toxic stuff going on at work, and there was even like toxic stuff in like my personal life. Um, so I guess the reason why it's difficult to share is because I kind of just move from difficult moments right into the next moment. Like, I try to distract myself and like let it pass, or I try to quickly work through it so I can get past it, because I think we can probably all agree that we're all constantly doing this, right? So it's like an evolution in a sense, like a pevolution, like a personal evolution. Kind of, like I don't know, you got to get a little raggedy in order to really notice when you get glammed up, right? But if you wear makeup every day, everything looks good, you add a little extra eyeshadow, no one's really going to notice. But in order for you to really like shake things up and have your like breakthrough, you gotta shit gotta get raggedy. Like, I don't know how else to say it. So in the beginning of quarantine, I was like, yes, I get time to myself. I was so excited. And then all the toxic BS that was going on. I mean, we all know what was happening in the world, so I'm not even gonna stir that back up. But I was also dealing with a lot of toxic stuff at where I was working, but I was working through all of it. So now fast forward towards the end of quarantine, and I think all the things that were building up that I was just distracting myself from, because that's my jam, that's what I do. I think it all just kind of came to a head. So during quarantine, if I just focused on that first quarantine, I would say like, oh, I think it was pretty good. I got a chance to focus on all the good things, all the positive things that people are able to pull, and I didn't really have negative stuff there, but it's the right after for me. So I think that that's where my struggles were, and that's where my like mental state was outside of where I like it to be. Because I wasn't able to just be go, 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 because things were starting to open up, but not really. We're still working from home, but so it's like we're kind of open, but we're kind of not. And I think that was when I found myself in a place of, shoot, like, I'm lost. Like, I am completely off of this routine, off of this schedule that was working so great. How do I get back on? And what I wish I would have done, again, hindsight's 2020, I wish that I would have tried to recreate something different that worked for me, because at the time we were, oh, can't wait to get back to normal, can't wait to get things back to the way they were. But now it's like, looking back, it's like I wish that I would have just accepted that things are not going to be back to the way that they were again. So we need to, well, I personally need to figure out, like, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I'm still not comfortable going to the gym, but I need to work out. Okay, I don't like the workouts that I were doing. They're too intense for where I am right now. Let me try to do it this way. Okay, I'm sick of cooking 3 meals a day, but I still need to eat. So let me, like, I wish that I just would have been a little bit more, given myself a little bit more grace, because I just wanted to go back to where I was right before quarantine, at the beginning of quarantine, where I personally feel like I was killing it. And I don't know how to be the in between. So I think that that was my struggle, and it is my struggle, because I still think that that realization is very new. Now I'm realizing, okay, Natasha, like, yeah, you were killing it. You were quarantine babe, but can we work on, just being Natasha right now and get that in order, and then you can work on killing something else. But that's also hard because I don't have time right now to address those, like, I guess issues or whatever is hindering me figuring my stuff out. And I feel like I don't have time to implement a new schedule. So I literally have pulled out old, like, you jot down, like, oh, today I have to do this, and tried to pull out, like, okay, how was I doing that back then? And I just have to stop. I, like, really got to quit it, and I have to just create something new. And that's kind of where I am now. So every day I try to, like, at the end of the day, I try to say, okay, tomorrow, wake up 7 a.m. I'm going to drink coffee. Like, I'm trying to make a schedule, and then it's like trial and error. So then at the end of the night, like, I'll look and see, like, okay, what worked and what didn't. And I'll be honest, be perfectly candid, that so far, maybe like 10% of any of it has been a yes. Majority of it is like, yeah, this is unreasonable. Like, this is just not sustainable. So it's just trial and error, but I'm just trying to be more patient with myself and work through it. And I think that the way that I'm looking back on the start of quarantine and before quarantine, and how I'm looking back on that and saying, like, dang, man, I was killing it. I probably wasn't feeling that same way about myself or my schedule or the way I was handling things at that moment. So I'm just hoping that, a couple months from now, I'll look back on now and say, like, oh, you were killing it. Or when I do get my schedule together, then I can look back on that moment and say, okay, it was a slow build, took a little time, but you were, was killing it. Yeah. So I'm trying to give myself more grace, which I can give everyone else around me all the grace in the world. I can be so patient and so, supportive of other people. So I'm just working on trying to give myself more of that too.
Right. And I think you have to give yourself credit, because like when I heard you tell your story, you talked about like identifying what you were struggling with. You implemented steps to take care of it. Like, you might think that they were small or it wasn't like a big deal, but that's huge that you thought, okay, I'm going to, make this schedule. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, do that. And then another layer of it is that you actually then assessed that stuff and then said, okay, how is it working? Like, it's not working, or it's too much. It's too, I need to scale back a little bit. That's huge. Like, I feel like I definitely didn't do that. And I feel like a lot of people don't. So you had enough, knowledge and, motivation to say, okay, something's wrong. I need to implement something to fix it. And then also let me look at what I implemented to see if it's even working. That is huge, and something that you definitely should give yourself a lot of credit for, because that's like kind of ahead of the game to me. And I feel like you do have a lot going on, and you're managing it a lot better than a lot of other people would, and so definitely give yourself grace, but give yourself like kudos and like congratulate yourself a little bit, because like that's huge to me. Like, listening to it, those are huge things.
I appreciate that. I really do. And I'm like realizing right now, as like, I'm kind of like tearing up, and like just feeling like emotional, that's why I don't like sharing stuff, because it's like it's like unplugging the dam. And it's like, if I could just, like the dam's about to burst or break or whatever, I'm the type of person like, call the beavers, call the dam fixer people, like, plug it. We don't have time to build it. We don't have time to do this. And I recognize, I know how important it is to let it out, to, don't keep it bottled in. But it's like, now there's water everywhere. Now I got to figure out how to clean this mess up. And it's like, I don't have time right now. Like, I don't deal well with this. I deal well with, can't. I'll stop what I'm doing to be there for someone else. But if it's my emotions, I'm like, child, we don't got time for this. Let's pick it up. Let's go. Exactly. So I don't like this. But I'm glad that I did share, if for no other reason. I mean, yeah, I hope that, someone else can relate. But for me personally, if for no other reason, what you just said about giving myself kudos is something that I feel like I needed in this moment. Because I'm the type of person that, life's a marathon. Yeah, right. But every single goal or anything that I set for myself to do ends up being a marathon, because I just struggle with like mini goals. I'm always, even like as a trial lawyer, I'm starting from the jury instructions, which is the end of trial. But you kind of have to start there to figure out how you're going to get there. So I need to still think like that, but then also realize that each step to get there is like, that's a goal in and of itself. So it's kind of, so like a marathon, you have, this is probably why, but you have the people that are at like the mile markers and they're literally like, yeah, go. But when you're running it, you're not feeling like, I'm killing it. You're like, shut up, I gotta get to the finish line, because that's all you're thinking about. And we really do need to be those people at the mile markers cheering. We need to be that for ourselves. So when we're working up to a big goal or working through something that's months down the road, a day down, whatever, the little steps that it takes to get there, like, we should really feel proud of ourselves along the way. So I'm going to take that on as a challenge for myself, and I'm going to do that. And I encourage everyone else to too. Thanks. Bye. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Cool. So we actually went longer than we normally do.
See, I told you I didn't have to share. I could just kept mine to myself, and then we would have kept it under 30. Hopefully everyone checked out and no one heard this. And then, yeah, that's that.
All right, y'all. So that is 0 to 100. Thank you for tuning in. You can still share your story with us. You always can share your story with us. So hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, wherever.
Yep. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.